We have the industry expert presentation, Personalization, Trust, and Compliance in Harmony, Creating Emotionally Intelligent Customer Experiences in Financial Services. Joining me on the stage is Nate Frick, Enterprise Strategist Director at Marigold. Nate, let's give him a round of applause, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nate.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. I realize I'm one of two speakers remaining between us and happy hour, so bear with me after a very full and fulfilling day. My name is, I was just introduced as Nate Frick. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, down in the US, but I come in peace. I work for a company called Marigold, and we are a global company that focuses on email, mobile, loyalty for brands of all shapes and sizes. I have the pleasure of working with numerous financial services companies, and based on some of those conversations I've had, that leads to today's topic, because it's an ongoing challenge that many of them, like I'm sure many of you here in the room today, face, which is how do we find that balance, that harmony between our personalization efforts and trust and compliance. You're not alone if you're wrestling with this. This is something we talk about quite often, but really the focus is on how do we take advantage of those transactional points and use them effectively to create some emotional connection to our customers. I typically like to start my presentations with an impactful quote from an up-and-comer in the industry, but I love this quote from Mr. Diamond. "Data is the lifeblood of good decision-making, but trust is the currency of our customer relationships." And that really is everything. And as marketers, that's what we're always searching for, is creating and cultivating that trust with our customers and our prospective customers so that we can enjoy a long-term fruitful relationship with them. It's not easy though. And customers are craving connection. They're craving connectedness to us as brand marketers. 75% of customers that have been interviewed have saying that they relate to a financial institution purely on a transactional basis. So the headwinds to create some of that emotional connection are significant, and we see that in evolving customer expectations. We see that there's constantly new competitive pressures coming in, and we have some generational changes in terms of how people have viewed financial institutions historically. So the goal of reaching that emotional connectedness is more challenging than ever based on some of the market conditions and the players that we see on a regular basis. In our view at Marigold, however, what this does is present an opportunity. So we look at trust and compliance as the foundational pillars of marketing engagement. And then what we do is supersize that with personalization. The reason that we lean so heavily into personalization is that 4/5 of customers are telling us that when they provide personalized data to us, like their interest in a loan or planning for university, for example, they expect to see personalized experiences back to them in kind. Now, it stands to reason that if they provide that personal data and they don't get rewarded with that personalized experience from us as marketers, that might be the last time they willingly provide some of that data to us. So every time we have a connection with them, every time that they willingly provide some information, it's incumbent upon us to maximize that and make sure it's fruitful for the customer who participated. Personalization isn't a risk to compliance. It's a requirement for trust. All right, we're going to do a little audience participation here. As I said, I work with many clients on a global basis. I have the pleasure of talking with them about some of their own individual challenges. And as I went through some conversations with others in your space, what I found was kind of a set of responses when we talk about compliance challenges that cause them the most friction in their own marketing efforts. So I'll kind of go through these one by one here. The first one is, How do they go about including required and evolving disclosures? The second response that I heard quite often was meeting accessibility standards. Third, how do you manage personalization logic? Because it can be very hard to control and it feels unwieldy at times. Be a lot of effort going in. And then, just like many of you here in the room, they work very hard to create a brand tone and a brand voice that they're challenged with, seeing that persevere through a series of approvals that are natural in their own environment. So let me do a show of hands here. I want to see if kind of that resonates with all of you here as well. So think about these. How about A, in terms of your own challenges when it comes to friction that you see in your process, required and evolving disclosures? Got a couple immediately. Thank you, sir. Meeting accessibility. Couple, okay. Personalization logic and how you go about managing that. Personalization is a hot topic, but it requires effort, okay? And then brand tone and making sure that's consistent through your efforts, okay? And then last but not least, all the above. All right. Actually, it's a pretty equal balance, so that's good. Did I miss anything? Are there some hot trends that you would add to this list if you had the chance? Okay. So the good news is a bit of a shameless plug for Marigold, but we address this because we are built for regulation. That's how we go about our approach to serving our clients and their own marketing efforts. And we do that through dynamic and pre-approved personalization. So that falls into three areas here. The first is utilizing dynamic modules that are pre-compliant. So content blocks might be grabbed and dropped into a marketing message that have already met your approval standards, and you can trust that it's going to meet your standards going out the door. You don't have to revisit that every single time. In that case, it might be, an offer on a specific loan, or it could be something that has a countdown timer attached to it to drive some desired engagement in real time. And then secondly, auto audits and approvals, and this is where AI starts to come into play. How do we use AI to check that content submitted into your marketing message or your campaign is built for the right tone and readability of what you're set up to do and what your standards are? And then last is it brand safe? And again, AI can help with this when you start to look at the approved data sets and making sure that as you craft these messages and get word out to your customers and your members, that everything is being done through the pre-approved channels. The challenge that we have as marketers in this space is taking that emotional promise we talked about at the outset and having that consistently follow through into our disparate touch points digitally. It's not an easy feat, and many other financial service marketers wrestle with this reality. Well, what we do at Marigold is we look at a framework to help address some of these challenges and these realities. And the framework consists of three different parts. The first is think about customers as more than just data points. They're not just a number, they're not just a click, but they are individuals and they expect relevant content, they expect timely messages, and importantly, they expect to be heard. Secondly, every message can make us or break us. We have to bear in mind that everything that we send out the door will either support that trust that we've worked hard to cultivate or potentially harm it. So bearing in mind in a regulated world, how we go about that messaging and making sure that we're fully compliant is critical. And third, that emotional connection has to survive compliance, and it is possible for it to do so. So when we talk about personalization and doing so at scale, we look at this as a combination of AI that's grounded in policy. It's bringing the best of both worlds into play on your behalf to achieve your goals. So with that said, in our point of view, it's time to get even more personal. There's no time like the present, and it's time to weigh in on this. You're working very hard, many of you in this room are working very hard to make those significant investments in your brand and to connect with your customers on a human level. It's not easy to do, and those digital touch points can cause us friction. That's why AI-driven personalization that's grounded in compliance and in policy is critical in making sure that you're looking at that from every single touch point in your approach. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of a leap over here to a different industry. And I know you're probably asking, okay, how did we just shift to Disney? Fair question. I have to be compliant too. So I have to make sure that what I show here today, I've got all the necessary approvals to do so. Disney is a long-standing client of Marigold's, and the reason I've included them here today, and this is an email template that you see, the reason for that is that Disney excels at using the data at their disposal and personalizing messages to their customers. So what you start to see here in this example are modules and approaches to Disney using real-time personalization at moment of open in an email to drive connectedness to the reader. And you can do all this through a modular templated approach that's already pre-built, but is starting to take advantage of the data that you've asked it to source. So imagine you've got rates in here or specific offers that you'd like to talk about. Those things can appear as the individual email recipient opens up his or her email, but if they've opened it too far after your campaign is expired, these now go away and they don't show. So it's some smart kind of machine-driven logic to help you have a greater chance of having your message resonate when the person opens it. So in our view, AI is mission critical. It's here to stay. And what we look at when we talk about the utilization of AI is what we call a data-driven engagement loop. And this is really where we're looking at this holistically on an always-on basis to measure results and impact of applying AI to what you're probably already doing today. And we do this in 3 steps. The first is predicting where the content comes into play and what content people might be looking for and when. And we bear that out in the platform so that it's ready to use on a modular basis. And then we personalize it with some of those approved data sets we talked about a moment ago, applying individual data points at time of send so that we're having an increased likelihood of engaging with the recipient and the reader when they get to that message. And then third, of course, is optimization. Test, test, and test again. And as you start to apply this cycle, you start to see gains out of your advanced AI modeling going forward so that what you've started with initially, and that's beared fruit, you can start to advance through an always-on strategy like you see here. I mentioned that we work with, we have the pleasure of working with numerous clients in financial services, and I'm using this as a bit of a comfort area if you are struggling with where to begin on AI. So these are quotes from others in your space to give some insight on how they're using AI to advance their mission already today. The first here is using compliance to assess the copy and content risk. Having AI kind of suss out, if you will, any content that's been created before it gets sent to make sure that everything is compliant and on brand. Secondly, an AI council review. And this is very important because a lot of disparate teams in a given organization want a voice in AI adoption and how it's rolled out. So creating a review allowed this particular client to have a lens on large language machine modeling so that everything that they did, all the stakeholders felt comfortable and approved in that approach. AI solution for branded subject line, that bottom left quadrant. I see this all the time and I love it. Creating a subject line is both art and science. Those of us who work in that space probably know that challenge. It's also very difficult to consistently create compelling subject lines. So what AI can help do is suggest some copy on your behalf, but then it still funnels into your own internal approval process, but it's an add-on to what your teams might already be doing and gives them another tool in their arsenal. And then last, Using AI for language localization, versioning, in this case it's a B2B client that was talking about it, but helping them extend those very challenging efforts when we get into localization through the adoption of AI. This is not to say that AI is a silver bullet. AI is challenging, and it comes with a lot of unrest, and it comes with a lot of conversations, and you all are probably having some of those yourselves today. Those challenges can take shape around compliance, control, and are we sure that we're respecting that customer trust when we deploy AI? The shapes and sizes of those challenges can be significant depending on your own organization and your goals, but we can adopt AI, and we've seen that with clients in our space, without compromising that control and without compromising that customer trust. One example I'll offer here, show of hands, who's familiar with send time optimization? Okay. So send time optimization, or STO, is a feature that we are very bullish on at Marigold. And what it does is allow you to create a message once, and then through an ongoing machine learning, machine modeling approach, get a sense for each individual and when they like to engage with a given message, day and time. That modeling gets smarter and more correct and accurate the more messages you send, and keep an eye on the engagement levels. The cool thing about this is person A might be wanting to open up a message within 20 minutes after you send it. Person B might be 12 hours later. You don't know that necessarily until we kind of start to look at the data and build the modeling around it. So a lot of brands are leaning into STO because it's increasing the likelihood of their message standing out in what is likely a very crowded inbox. The other cool thing about STO is that it's PII agnostic. You're not talking about individual data points in it that might cause friction with others internally. You're just talking about engagement metrics and making sure that that message has the best chance of reaching your intended recipient when it matters to them. So that's just one example of taking advantage of AI and machine learning and putting that into best practice. And again, we're seeing adoption of that significantly at Marigold. All right, I'm going to do one more audience poll here. So now, what's your biggest barrier when it comes to personalization? And I've got a couple in here based on conversations I've had with others as well. Including required disclosures without losing clarity in the intent behind your message. Legal and compliance review cycles. How do you personalize tone and message and voice at scale? If a message is personalized, how do I reach everyone at once? And of course, fragmented tools and disconnected systems. We've got multiple platforms, they don't talk to each other or they struggle to do so. So how do I take advantage of all the good ideas here if my data can't even talk to each other, right? So again, I'd love to do a show of hands. How about the first one, required disclosures? Who's struggling with that with personalization? Okay. Legal and compliance review cycles. Got to be some hands on that, yeah, thank you. Personalizing tone and message and voice at scale, right? And then fragmented systems. All right, great. How about all the above? Yeah, there's common themes that we start to see here, but you're not alone is my message again, like I said previously as well. You have to balance technology and humanity. Our clients expect both efficiency and empathy. I absolutely love this quote. So what we're talking about at the end of the day is that balance between human connectedness and personalization at scale that allows you to do your job in a new and more robust fashion. I'm a big believer in good ideas come from anywhere. So this is just a short list of brands outside of your space that are doing some really cool things with AI. And on the right, what you see there consistently is that they're all leading with a privacy-first approach. So as we start to kind of see some AI adoption in our day-to-day lives, whether it's at work or outside of it, we see that this is really coming into fruition, and it has a positive impact when done correctly on how we as consumers lead our lives. You've got recommendations coming in, you've got travel planning, you've got support elements that are faster and perhaps more effective than they ever used to be. Some really cool things being done in all sorts of different industries that might make sense for you as well. And what we do when we talk with our clients is we bring all good ideas to the table from any industry and any size, because you never know what might resonate. This is a big one, but it's something that really resonates when we talk with our customers, and that's a modern marketing playbook. So feel free to take a photo of this one if you'd like. But these are just some of the steps that we take in our own efforts to summarize the opportunity at hand. First is, think about unifying your customer view and your customer data. And that goes back to the previous point about disparate systems. But the more that we can have all of this in one place, the more effective you're going to be in your own marketing efforts. Embrace AI, but do so responsibly. It's not without its own hesitations, often by people that you work with. So how you kind of take that lockstep approach is going to bring people along comfortably. Lead with empathy. Again, remember, at the end of the day, there is a human on the receiving end of your message. Keep an eye on that empathy, balance it with technology. Move fast, but do so in a compliant manner. And yes, those two things can work in harmony with each other. Personalize within your policy, and that's going to be unique to each one of you. But when you start thinking about personalization that's driven off AI and thinking about what data sets you want to utilize, make sure that compliance is on board and everything you do from that first step is something they're okay with. Break down silos. That applies to both data and teams. But if you're thinking about a new effort of embracing AI, make sure you've got all the right people involved from the beginning. You don't want to stumble onto that later and have your plans fall short. And then finally, always be redefining your own success. And I think how we as marketers define success today is probably quite different than we did 5 years ago. It's always evolving, it's always changing. AI certainly introduces some complexities into that as well as some opportunities, but always be mindful that how we measure success requires and demands a revisit. All right, I'll leave you with this. Just think about when you embrace AI or have conversations around where to begin, if you haven't already, start with a single, easy use case. Something that makes sense to you as a business, but everyone else internally can also wrap their heads around. That send time optimization example that I gave earlier is one of those. Bring compliance in. You don't want to do that too late, otherwise your messaging strategies might take a hit. And then third, test and learn with empathy. Focus in on that human connection. Trust is your brand. Personalization is how you prove it. And compliance is how you protect it. On that note, thank you very much. Sure. Any questions I can take?
Hi. Thank you so much. The content was really interesting. Didn't expect compliance to be interesting, but was pleasantly surprised.
I think that was a compliment.
My question is, when we speak about personalization, compliance, etc., the topic of consent comes automatically because, and I know in one of the examples, like the industry examples that you had showed, that also was featured. My question is about, when clients give us consent, they have given us consent for some particular things to do, and with the evolution of AI, we are using it for other purposes now. And that's where the compliance question comes, what the consent was given for A and now we're using it for B. How do you go about that? Do you have to get consent again? And how do you, because everybody's now using AI for different purposes.
Sure.
So from From a compliance perspective, what would be your point of view on that?
Yeah, great question. Typically, if you feel like that advanced use case is even in a gray area relative to what someone initially consented to, we do recommend revisiting that consent. And that could change. And I think customers actually are becoming more familiar with that and comfortable knowing that it's not necessarily a one and done anymore. As what we bring to the table as marketers starts to advance, we might be asked to revisit that consent policy, or here's a specific use case that we're asking for you to participate. Do we have your permission to do so? So yeah, typically we err on the side of caution, and we will look at a follow-up consent approach, again, if that is falling into a gray area where you're looking to use it. Thanks for the question.
Any more questions? Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.